Who am I? That's the greatest question that there is. And it's a question that we've talked about together in so many different ways. Everything emerges from the answer to that question. And I can't answer the question of who am I without answering the question of where am I? Where do I live? So who am I is the question of identity. Where am I is the question of universe story. Where do I live? At play in the world today are two fundamental narratives. And we need to really understand them deeply of who am I? The first narrative, and it appears in two forms, is a separate self narrative. And there's a religious form and there's a materialist secular form. They both have some truth, but they're both true but partial, and ultimately they're based on fundamentally false scientific premises, both interior science and exterior science. But the separate self story says I'm a separate self and I'm obedient to God. But I'm separate from all of reality. I was created by God and I need to be obedient. Or I'm a separate self. I'm not part of the larger frame. I'm not part of a field of eros. I'm not part of a field of consciousness. I'm a separate self. That is the basic notion that underlies most of Western democracies, for example. And whether it's in a Western democracy or other systems of government around the world, I am in some form of a win-lose metrics. I'm needing to succeed in order to be valued, which means I need to produce in a way which can be commodified and sold in a particular way. I'm in a win-lose story governed by a win-lose metrics, and that is where my value comes from. And without that, I don't have intrinsic value. That's the sense of separate self. And that's false. I'm not a separate self. I'm actually part of the larger field of reality. But I'm not merged in fusion with that larger field. The second version, which is offered in reality today, and it has a religious version and a secular version, is I'm a social self. And the social self might mean in the religious version, I'm part of a particular religion, and my entire value comes from my standing within that particular religious or sometimes even national religious structure. And if I'm part of that chosen people and that racial structure, I'm okay. And if I'm not, I'm not. So I'm defined by my social context entirely. That's one version of a social self. But then there's an equally insidious, more insidious version of the social self that actually dominates the internet. That's the social self that's expressed by data science. The social self as expressed by data science upgrades algorithms and downgrades human beings and says that human beings are the sum total of their measurable actions. And we can get enough data about a human being to predict how they will act given particular stimuli. So the human being becomes a rat in a social maze, nudged and prodded by social stimuli, likes, views, all of the structures of apps which collect data with their shiny exteriors, promising a few conveniences, but actually collecting data fed into machine intelligence in order to manipulate your ability to consume or vote, governance, economy, in accordance not with your own interior value, because you're not given enough inward space to discover that, but in accordance with the agendas of whoever has bought the information about you, who's now using split test proven methods to manipulate you. Right? That's the social self that's illegitimate. The social self that's described by Alex Pentland in his book, Social Physics, which uses mathematical formulations to figure out how to herd human beings, how to tune the social herd, using Pentland's phrases, in order to deploy long discredited behaviorist technologies introduced by B.F. Skinner to create a docile population that is being the most productive that it can possibly be, eliminating anomalies, eliminating exceptions, and creating a kind of bland Stepford wife world where everyone seems happy, but actually our interior humanity, our choice, our individuation beyond ego, not our separate self, but our unique self. And the unique self is the realization that I'm a unique expression of the field. We call the field true self. True self is the realization that I am part of this larger field of love desire, of eros, of love intelligence, of consciousness. I'm an irreducibly unique expression of that field. That's a unique self. Now notice that the unique self bypasses the pathologies of the hyper-separate self. The hyper-separate self, let's say that again, the hyper-separate self moves into kind of a hyper-separate self individuality. And the hyper-social self moves into kind of a hyper-collectivism. So the social self ignores the separate self, the individuated human being, and the individuated human being ignores the social self. Both of them get lost. One gets absorbed in a social self story of behaviorist manipulation. And there's a direct line from Skinner to Facebook. And when Facebook says everyone has a desire to express themselves, we're going to connect everyone, and they're going to share about their lives. What Facebook is doing is actually expressing in these banal terms the actual vision of B.F. Skinner, and through his successor, Alex Pentland, at the MIT Media Lab, which is to actually control society through avoiding risk by removing uniqueness and anomaly, and being able to nudge and direct people through social pressure, right, to behave appropriately with the herd. That's insanely insidious. It actually underlies the agendas of Google and Facebook. When Google says they want to organize the world's information, for Google, information is everything. That's tech speak. Information is for Google reality. Google actually is saying, I want to organize reality. And both Sergey Brin and Larry Page and Mark Zuckerberg say that our goal is, quote, the societal goal. The societal goal of herding humanity into this larger social self in which free will has disappeared, as Pentland says explicitly, as Skinner said explicitly, in which the autonomous human has disappeared, in which interiority doesn't matter, as Skinner and Pentland note explicitly. Interiority doesn't matter. We actually gather information about the nature of human social interaction. We create artificial groups of human beings who can be we create, let's say that again, artificial groups of human beings who can be manipulated by mathematically derived algorithms that say that if you see this, this, and this in a particular order, an advertisement for socks, followed by a 4-second gap in which you see a picture of 3 kittens, right? And then you see then a third image, right, of a woman dressed in a particular way. And if you run them in that particular order, and it's been split tested actually through Facebook 1 billion times, there's a particular group of people who will respond a particular way to the next offer that follows. Everyone just gets that? And it's essentially what's happening is the social self is not the social self who's connected intimately and part of the intimate universe. The social self is the one who is put into an artificial data group that figures out what your lowest common denominator reflexive reaction will be to a series of stimuli, literally like a rat in a maze. We are the rats in the maze of the techplex, which has reduced the human being to, and I'm using B.F. Skinner's phrase, a manipulable social self. No, that's not right. We're not social selves, nor are we merely unique, nor are we merely, let's say that again, nor are we merely separate selves. We're not social selves, nor are we merely separate selves. Rather, in unique self, the highest version of social self, my natural participation in the field of love, desire, in the field of intimacy, is integrated, and my individuation is integrated. So separate self points to unique self because separate self talks about my higher individuation beyond separation. And unique self also picks up deeply on social self, but on its highest form, which is that we're actually affected by each other because we live in an intimate universe and we're actually part of the same field of amor. And we're part of the same field of desire and we're part of the same field of love, which is why Alex Pentland's mathematical equations work at all. The reason they work is because we are affected by social pressure. We are affected by social pressure. We are social beings, but we're unique social beings. We're irreducibly unique and we choose and we create. And our interiority is a unique expression of the interior face of the cosmos. So we're not merely social self. We're not merely separate self. Social self and separate self actually rise beyond skin encapsulated egos, beyond lowest common denominator, beyond lowest common denominator manipulable human beings. Social self and separate self rise into true self. True self is the one field, the one heart, the one desire, the one breath, the one world, the one evolution. Right? That's true self. The total number of true selves in the world is one. Every single one of us participate in that same true self. And then we actually rise, we deepen, and we realize we're not just fused in a one self and a true self. We're irreducibly unique expressions of that love intelligence and love beauty. Who are you? You are a unique chapter and verse in the amorous cosmos. Who are you? You are a unique chapter and verse in the universe, a love story. Who are you? The trajectory of your unique self is the next stage of evolution itself. Who are you? You're an irreducibly unique expression of the love intelligence and love beauty. That's the initiating and animating eros and desire and intelligence of all that is, that lives in you, as you, and through you, that never was, is, or will be ever again other than through you. And as such, you're not merely social self and you're not merely separate self. You are unique self, and you can turn to your unique circle of intimacy and influence, to which you are allured and which is allured to you, which is the intention of cosmos, because cosmos is not random in any essential sense. Randomness always appears as part of a larger order, a larger elegance, a larger vector, a larger direction, a larger telos. Cosmos has a direction. It moves from mud to Mozart, right? From bacteria to Bach, from dirt to Shakespeare. It moves from matter to life to mind through all of its individuated levels at each of those three great stages. And all of that pours into you. You, the irreducibly unique set of allurements configured by cosmos to give your unique gift into your unique circle of intimacy and influence. So are you a social self? Well, of course you are, true but partial. You're part of this larger social whole. It's not good to be lonely. Our interior seeks other interiors. Are you a separate self? Of course you are. Of course you're in some sense separate and individuated, true but partial. Ultimately, there is no separation. Ultimately, we're part of one field, but we're individuated expressions of that field with unique gorgeousness and unique beauty that is the intention of all that is. And we come together in unique self-symphonies. We come together as part of a planetary awakening in love through unique self-symphonies. That's not a social hive in which you're reduced and manipulated. It's not a superorganism in which a degraded version of you is controlled by upgraded algorithms. It's a planetary awakening and outrageous love and eros through the irreducibly unique eros that lives in you, in which you're playing your unique self-instrument in the larger unique self-symphony. Oh my goddess. Yes, that's what we're here to do. That's our intention.